Okay. Good afternoon, everyone that's joining us. While we wait for a few more people to join, if you wouldn't mind going ahead, enter your information, your name, your business into the chat. That way we are able to follow up with you on further questions. We'll wait just a little bit as a few more people are arriving, and then we'll get started promptly. Okay, well, let's kick this off. Good afternoon, and thank you, everyone, for joining today's Business Continuity Forum, hosted by the City and County of Broomfield and the North Metro Denver Small Business Development Center. I'm Sam Taylor, President and CEO of the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce and the moderator of today's forum. I'll be joined by Mayor Pat Quinn and an outstanding panel of experts from law to workforce, chart a course through these turbulent economic times. When you registered for this forum, many of you submitted questions to the panel, which will include in the individual remarks, either through their open question or sometime during the answer period. For some, you may want to listen and then ask questions later. You can do that in the chat function. In the handouts portion of the webinar, you'll find a summary bio sheet for all the individuals presenting today, as well as their contact information in case you think of a question later or follow-up that you want to ask them. Additionally, this session is being recorded, as you'll be able to access the session on the City and County's website, and we'll have a link on it at the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce also. Now, I would like to introduce you to Mayor Pat Quinn for some opening remarks. Mayor Quinn.
Thanks, Sam. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pat Quinn, Mayor of Broomfield. I am a small business owner myself. I had my own CPA firm in Denver for 20 some years, and I've been active as a CPA as sole proprietor for the last 10 years. And I'm speaking to you from the beautiful Estes Park area. First, I'd like to acknowledge two great partners in our efforts to grow and sustain Broomfield's economy and businesses. Sam Taylor and the entire Broomfield Chamber leadership staff and members, thank you so much. Angela Atkinson, the director of the North Metro Denver SBDC, and her team. More importantly, I'd like to thank each of you for starting, growing, and sustaining your businesses in our community. I know how tough that is. And it's been really tough this last year, unlike any other. While operating a business can be challenging, it also is incredibly rewarding. Building a team, working with clients and customers, and being a part of a great community. These past months have challenged us all, trying to understand when and how to open and reopen, ensuring the health and safety of your customers, employees, and yourself and your family. I want to acknowledge how frustrating the process of reopening has and can be for the city council, for the city staff, and for you. And as we see from other communities around the country, each is meeting these challenges differently. My focus, along with my colleagues on city council, has been to maintain our priorities around both public health and our community's vitality. I am proud that we have been thoughtful and keep moving our community forward. We will continue to find ways to support our local businesses with programs and services like Enhanced Broomfield, waiving fees for expanding outdoor service, getting updated data and information, or finding a new key employee from the Workforce Center. Today's forum is to help you think about and to give you tools to help you move your business forward to continued success and sustainability. We have put together a group of experts to help you consider legal, tax and finance, workforce, and marketing issues. I know from my own business, the key to success is serving your clients and customers. I would like to turn it back over to Sam to introduce the panel. Sam?
Thank you very much, Mayor Quinn. I really appreciate that. I know we all appreciate the hard work you and your team are putting in to lead the City and County of Broomfield. We have here today a very distinguished panel with knowledge and expertise across a wide array of fields. And I'd like to do now, as a way of introduction, I'm going to ask each of our panelists a question to get the discussion going, one at a time. I'll go around the screen, introduce each of you and get your opinion on an opening question, and then we'll open up the discussion a bit wider after that. I'll ask the panelists to signal me. If you have something to say, just raise your hand. If there's a question and you want to add something, if somebody else is answering it, or when we get to the questions, when I ask one, let me know who would like to field that. That way we won't speak over each other and we can have a good flow. I'll also remind our audience they may type their questions for our panel at any time using the question feature in the webinar control panel. First of all, I'm going to introduce Jeff Romine. He is the Economic Vitality Director and Economist for the City and County of Broomfield, and he works with the Broomfield team and other community partners towards sustaining and growing Broomfield's economic and community vitality. Jeff previously worked for the City and County of Denver as the Chief Economist and Strategic Advisor there for 11 years. Thank you for being here today, Jeff. And my question for you is, what is the City and County doing today, and what is it considering to support business in Broomfield to survive and succeed? Jeff, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Thanks, Sam, for pointing that out. So first off is, again, thanks to my fellow panelists and the mayor for his opening remarks. You know, the greatest concern I'm hearing, at least, is for the lack of information and certainty in running a business right now. And that's not just, you know, the public health orders and things like that. It's just, what are the customers and clients looking for? What is that dynamic? And just the uncertainty of what the next 3 months, let alone 6 months or a year, is going to look like. Business ownership has always been an uncertain challenge, and it continues to be more so today as we're falling into an economic recession, and the number of unknowns is growing. I want to tell you, though, that everybody is listening. We are getting there, and we're trying to figure out how to help. The Broomfield leadership, the mayor, the city manager, the city council has been listening and responding rapidly. We put together the Enhanced Broomfield program under the mayor and a couple council members' leaderships, and brought that forward in a matter of 2 weeks, and began making grants to small businesses to help them survive and provide that support, and got checks out in less than 2 or 3 weeks. So rapid response. The next thing that happened is the mayor and city council began to see that we were going to be able to reopen, and saw the challenges around that and pushed forward the outdoor seating changes, moved that process forward so that firms, small businesses could open and expand their patios in less than a week. They were able to get acknowledgement for liquor licenses and other things. That continues to be the approach we're following. And you know, there's many other things like tax regulatory adjustments and other things. But really the most important step, and the thing that all businesses should be doing right now, is focusing on their customers. As the mayor pointed out in his opening remarks, serving your clients and customers is the most important thing. And what we have today is a group of panelists who can help you think of some of those questions around marketing, around finance, around legal issues, and do those things with a customer focus. The other thing is for them to reach out and get information. And in this particular case, it's forums like this. It's the upcoming Creative Entrepreneurship Series that we're sponsoring, starting in late July, and many other places. And if you have any questions about where to turn, know that the City and County of Broomfield is there, and you can always send us questions through email or give us a call. So thanks, Sam, and I'll turn it back to you. Sam, you're on mute now.
The fun of webinars and Zoom meetings. You never know when you get caught. Thank you, Jeff. Our next panelist is Chris Dewhurst, Division Manager for the Broomfield Workforce Center. He has over 20 years of experience in workforce development that includes leadership and program development. And prior to joining the City and County of Broomfield, Chris was the Worker Programs Manager with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Chris, I'd like to ask you, what role does the Broomfield Workforce Center have in the local community during this unprecedented time?
Thank you, Sam. Hopefully I got myself off of mute. So yeah, appreciate the question and appreciate being on this panel with all these wonderful individuals. So the Workforce Center and the services that we provide really sits at the intersection of businesses who are looking to hire, as well as individuals who are looking for employment. So our services are provided at no cost, both to businesses and job seekers, and we're proud to offer those services through the City and County of Broomfield. It goes without saying that the current economic situation and the current pandemic has just created massive disruptions in business operations as well as employment. So one of the roles that the Workforce Center and the team has played in our community is by helping businesses as they've had to furlough employees or lay off individuals. And that's, we've helped with individuals filing for unemployment insurance benefits and where appropriate, helping them find new employment opportunities. And so as the economy continues to reopen, we, the workforce team, are here to assist businesses find the right talent for their operations. And so we're starting to see businesses with needs to hire new employees. And we're fortunate to be part of a statewide network of workforce centers. And so we have access to job seekers all across the Metro Denver area who are looking for opportunities. And so we're really helping businesses connect and find the talent that they need. Or in instances where they are determining that they have to lay individuals off permanently, we're here to help in that transition as well and help create as smooth of landing for those employees as possible. And then a couple of things that I'll highlight that may be of interest to businesses that are listening in. You know, this disruption has forced us to really look at how business is done and force some changes. And so if you have employees that are needing new skills, needing to upskill, that's a role that workforce can play in helping to procure, obtain that employment that can lead to short-term, you know, credentials, industry recognized credentials through short-term training. As well as we have the ability, if somebody's hiring a new staff member, to defray some of those onboarding costs through what we call on-the-job training. And so individuals, as they're going through the training and onboarding process, we can provide a wage subsidy that goes back to the business. And so, you know, and finally, I'll close, we have access to a variety of partners, as well as data and labor market information that businesses might find helpful. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in our services to reach out, and we're really here to help our community.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, in the few years I've worked with you, I've seen you helping people file for unemployment. I've seen you help businesses find employees, former employees find work. Very diverse office you have there. So thank you very much. Our next panelist is Sarah Brennan Green. She's a programming librarian with the Broomfield Library. She's been with the library for quite some time now, so you've probably seen her around there. And she prides herself on being a source of knowledge for anything people need information about. Sarah, how can the library help a business get going again?
One way the library can help is to make our computers available and have better connections than I have here at home. So my apologies if I'm flaking in and out. We work very closely with the Workforce Center, and so where they are concentrating on helping employees,
We do have a bandwidth issue.
do training online for to find out what other businesses in their scope are working on. We work though more heavily with the job seeker. And so we're open our regular hours, 9 to 9 every Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5 Friday and Saturday, and then 1 to 5 on Sunday. So even people who are working non-standard hours will find time to get to the library. And if they can't, then they can still work from home.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah. I've worked with the library in the past. They do have quite a few computers upstairs for people that are looking for jobs. If you don't have one at home and can't get to the workforce, they do have plenty up there and databases to search. They've been a really good asset to the community. Moving around the screen, our next panelist is probably better known as the digital marketing dude, Peter Brissett. Peter is the North Metro SBDC marketing consultant, as well as the proprietor of DMD Consulting, where he's provided marketing, consulting, and services to clients since 2009, including to the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce for the last year. Peter, businesses are struggling to keep up with their digital marketing now, and it's probably more important than ever before. And there's some easy ways to communicate with our customers and prospects about changes to the business, things like product, service offerings, change of business hours, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, Sam. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary Quinn, and thank you to all of your businesses that are on here live and watching this later. The one thing we've really been emphasizing over the last few months is that easy means of communication with your customers and your prospects. And the easiest, simplest way right now is actually to use Google My Business. So Google My Business is that little tool that has your hours and links to your website, your phone number, where you're located. And Google's done a lot of things to enhance that during the COVID-19 crisis to allow you some extra ways to communicate with your clients. So you can really post a lot more information on what it's going to take to do business with you. So for restaurants example, if your dine-in is open, you can mark that you have dine-in, but maybe you don't have dine-in yet, but you've got takeout and delivery. And you can show that easily on that profile. I know for myself, I really want to support local businesses. So I've really been looking that up to try to find out, how do I do business with this particular business? Restaurants in particular is a great example. Do I need to make a reservation or not? Or can I just walk in and try to get a table? So all that information can be posted on your Google My Business page. If you've changed how you're operating in some very fundamental ways, you can provide that information there. What are you requiring for someone to do business with you? Wearing of masks is pretty mandated in most of the area around here. So go ahead and put that on there. But is there something else that's required? You can add that in a special place called COVID-19 updates right inside your Google My Business page and communicate that to your clients. Your hours could be changing. Things are happening all the time. The governor was speaking earlier. I haven't heard of any new closures or anything like that recently, but it could change tomorrow. Things are happening on a daily basis almost. And you can go in there and update this anytime you want to make sure you have the most current relevant information that you're providing to your customers and prospects. People want to do business with you. They want to see how they can support businesses, and we need to be able to communicate with them. Sometimes it's harder to get your website updated and get those changes made there, and that's actually probably the second thing that people look at. They're going to look at your Google My Business page first. So that's our big recommendation right now. Make sure that is up to date with as much information as possible. Update it every day if you want. Update it multiple times during the day if you need to make sure you're communicating everything clearly to your customers and prospects.
Thank you, Peter. That's some really good information. You really do need to have your information out there in front of your potential customers. Otherwise, they just won't see it. Next, I'd like to go around the screen to Margaret Lent Parker. This is an attorney and general legal consultant for the North Metro SBDC. Margaret assists her business clients with a broad range of matters, including business formation, contracting, risk management, and employment. And she enjoys helping her clients with proactive business planning. Margaret, I hear a lot of concern around leases and supplier contracts these days. And I actually hear it internally because we've had those questions too. What legal considerations should businesses be thinking about if they might default on their rent or other contractual payments?
Well, thanks for that good question. And as a preface, I kind of view the issues surrounding COVID-19 and legal issues kind of in two buckets. There's the risk management concerns about injury and COVID-19 claims for people contracting the disease. And then the second bucket is what you've alluded to, which is contracts and contractual obligations. And so if we use commercial leases as a prime example, because so many people are struggling to pay their rent, the key word I think that kind of applies across the board is being proactive, and that's what you're talking about. So I kind of outlined a few steps I think that would get people along the way. The first is know your what governmental limitations have been imposed in these times, unprecedented limitations. So for example, the moratoria on evictions, which now in Colorado, there's not a moratorium, but there's been an extended notice requirement for forcible entry and detainer. So I think it's now a 30-day notice that's required as opposed to a much shorter notice under the law. So that's constantly changing. So if this is a recording, don't take what I'm saying as gospel, go look it up. The next thing is think about and know project your ability to pay. Really look closely at, maybe work with your CPA to run projections. What can you pay? What to help you think about negotiations with your landlord, or whether you're worried about defaulting. Then third, know your contract. If you haven't read your contract, read it. Look at what your rights and obligations are, what kind of terms there are for defaults, and what the remedies your landlord has for those, so that you can know going into this, if you haven't already faced this issue, what might happen if you default, and how there might be opportunities to cure or that sort of thing. And then fourth, communicate early and often with your landlord or the other side of your contract if you believe that you're going to have challenges meeting your obligations under that agreement. Early communication can facilitate negotiation, and that's where, going back to point number 2 about knowing what you can do, can help you in your negotiations. Say, okay, well, here's what I can pay you. How can we work around this and negotiate other terms of the contract? Another thought is, pay what you can so that you're not just defaulting completely. And I also added on thinking about some other things while I was listening to other folks talk, and when I talk about this with the risk management piece too, but often communicating with your fellow businesses in your same industry. So industry associations and people in a like business will have similar experiences to you potentially, and often you may have unique solutions or issues that arise that other people may have already faced. Or also from a legislative perspective, when you're a group in force, you can make changes on a much larger scale when you're working together. So collaborating with other folks in your industry and looking at resources in your industry, while that I think maybe is more helpful in the risk management perspective, it might also be helpful when you're looking at what's reasonable from a contracting perspective in your industry. So those are my initial thoughts on that.
And so it sounds like a lot of it boils down to communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My favorite word in the practice of law.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Well, I'd also like to introduce you to Lauren Metz. Lauren's a CPA and owner of Antora CPA. Lauren is a financial consultant for the North Metro Denver SBDC as well, and her mission to help individuals and business owners achieve financial success through personalized accounting, tax, and financial services. Got a question that's on everybody's mind. I was just looking through the data, and over 200 businesses with a Broomfield address received PPP loans of between $150 and $10 million. So those questions are very common about what is it. So Lauren, what can you tell us about PPP and how to apply for forgiveness?
There's a lot out there, a lot of information. Just like Margaret said, it's been constantly changing since the CARES Act was released in March. And as a fellow CPA, I'll let the mayor fact check me if we have different perspective on any of this. So some new information is that new PPP loans can still be applied for through the beginning of August. So for any businesses still interested, talk to your lender and see if you can still apply. Many businesses are coming up on their forgiveness now, and there's been new forgiveness application just released in the last couple weeks. The first one came out in May. Now we've got 2 new ones actually. If you are a sole proprietor or a single member LLC with no employees, you may qualify to use the EZ form. Hopefully it's easy. So check with your lender again, make sure you're using the right form for your business and that you're getting all of the correct calculations that you need to qualify for forgiveness. So that'll be including if your head count has been reduced, if your salaries and wages have been reduced, getting all those calculations correct. There are some great spreadsheets and tools out there online, so don't feel like you have to create something from scratch and reinvent the wheel. Use the resources that are already out there. Through the SBDC, we created a document checklist. So if anyone wants to put in the chat or email us, we can get you that. Just bulleted list of what forms you should be compiling and retain for the application, and in the worst case that you got audited after this process. So just know that with all the changes, you've got some options still. So anyone that received funding after June 5th has the option of the original 8-week covered period or the new 24-week period. So in my opinion, if you qualify for the 8 weeks, definitely go ahead, get on with that forgiveness process. For one, you'll get the stress over with of the application process, and 2, you'll get that debt off of your balance sheet. So however much is forgiven, maybe the whole thing, maybe a part of it, initially when you receive the funding, that'll go on your balance sheet as a liability. Once it's forgiven, it'll net out against that liability. And if you need to apply for additional funding through another lender going forward, or maybe even next year, having that off your balance sheet will make your financials in a better position, maybe easier for you to get some additional funding. So there's a lot going on. Get a one-on-one consultation. So contact us through the SBDC, have someone review your spreadsheet and calculation. If you still have time to make changes to your spending and your head count, let's figure that out before your 8 weeks or 24 weeks runs out. So get in touch with us.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Lauren. Yeah, getting it off your balance sheet is probably a really good idea. Okay, I think that introduces everyone we have here now. I don't think I missed anyone. What we're going to do now that we've had a chance to introduce ourselves and say a few words, I thought we might take a look at the list of the questions the audience has already submitted. So the way we're going to do it, the audience, you can put questions. There's a question section. We already got some for at the beginning, as I mentioned, and we'll start out with those. But if you do have some questions, go ahead and enter them into the form. We'll take a look at it into the chat one. In the meantime, I'll be looking at here. Some of the questions are generic, some are quite case specific. So we're going to try to cover the most ground with everybody. When I ask a question, some of them are a little more wider range. So a panelist, if you think you've got a really good answer and some information to share, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll call on you so we don't have that tendency to accidentally talk over each other if our bandwidth is not functioning quite well. And if somebody's answering it and you have some additional information, you know, say there's a legal question, but a CPA needs to talk into it. We might need you both to weigh in. Or if it comes into the city legislation, how it is, the mayor or Jeff might want to speak. So we'll do it that way. So the first question we're going to answer, and this one is a business lease. We touched on it a little bit. We'll see if we can get some additional thing. It is kind of detailed. How do I get rent relief or renegotiate some of the terms of my lease without losing all the other ones, without, you know, probably violating the entire lease? I mean, if they'll take a reduced rent for a short period, how can I make sure that I don't lose any of the protections I have in that lease?
Do I need to raise my hand since this is
No, I was looking straight at you because this one is kind of geared towards you.
Well, I guess for this question asker, I'm not going to have a really wonderful silver bullet answer. It's a matter of negotiation. And you have a contract in place right now. It's, you know, that is the contract that's governing your current relationship. And if it's going to change, you renegotiate it. And if you agree to those terms, then that's what you agree to. But if they're wanting you to agree to something that you can't do, that's a deal breaker, like, then it's just a matter of negotiation. I mean, that's what a contract is, a bargain between two parties that they're willing to enter into. So I guess I would suggest, you know, perhaps researching and consulting with, you know, others who might, you know, have experience in your area or with the type of lease that you have to see what is considered reasonable. That might be one place to look at. So you might have a little bit more leverage to go back and say, no, that's not a reasonable change, you know. But if it's something that, you know, the reduced rent is really what you need to survive and you can handle the other terms, it's just something that you have to take into consideration. There's really no good answer, I don't think.
Yeah, communication boils down to, yet again.
Yeah.
This one could be open to quite a few people, depending on your experience. We do have some retailers, restaurants that are attending and watching this. And one of the questions that came in originally was, how do I reach my existing customers, maybe not the loyal customers, but the occasional ones that I don't know their names? How do I reach them to bring them in? Anybody?
I guess that's for me to start with. So the Google My Business is the first way to do that. I would really tap into the customers that you do know and letting them know exactly what's going on, because they're going to share that and tell their friends and extend that. So you always got to start with the known thing that you have and who you're communicating with, and make sure you're communicating super well with the clients that you know you can. And then from there, people are spending more time on social media right now. Use Facebook, use Instagram, use these platforms to reach those new customers. Let them know about the offers and specials that you're probably running right now to get them in the door, and make sure you're using those platforms to do that. But start with who you have, make sure they know exactly what's going on. Again, the more you can communicate right now, the better. The more you can show, this is how we're handling safety in our community and our facility here. This is what we're doing to protect our customers. This is a safe place for you to come. Pictures, video, and adding that to social media. Everywhere you can put that, communicate with who you know already. They're going to bring their friends. They're going to invite other people, and use those platforms for reaching out. But it's the simplest, easiest way right now.
Thank
If
you.
I could just, Sam, if I can just add two other things, and one is make sure your messaging is consistent with what you want to say. Peter pointed out it's public health, you know, and it being safe. And so when you're showing certain pictures of servers or bartenders or other things, have them masked. So that people get the quiet message too, that things are happening. And it's really important to send that See, Sam, you're doing great. The second thing that I just wanted to mention is we did have a similar question to this sent in through email when we were first getting reopening. And I worked with our planning department and found out that, of course, we have temporary sign ordinances. And so businesses can put additional signage out, whether they be the spinning sign that you see sometimes, or even some small temporary signs along, some right-of-way and other things. There's rules around it, so please reach out to us to make sure that you're following the right things. Those are temporary signs, not permanent, but that's another way to draw people's attention now that we're starting to see traffic and bikes and pedestrians out a lot more. It's really important. And if you do have a sign spinner, make sure they are masked at the same time. So I just wanted to add that to Peter's comments.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Sarah, do you have something to add?
I did. I just wanted to recommend, I know it sounds like the nerdy librarian, but there's a free database called Reference USA to help you hone in on particular zip codes and income levels and interest levels that can help you find that base you might be missing. We have a restaurant in our neighborhood, and he sends a personalized newsletter with pictures and thanking people for coming in. So it really, when you say, Peter, to find those people in your neighborhood, the influencers, next door is, I always call it bother your neighbor, but people are on there and talking, and so they really are, they share the good stories as well. So that would be me as a shopper.
Thank you very much. And as a bit of shameless self-promotion, the Chamber started a Facebook group called Broomfield Area Business Strong. It is not specific to the Chamber. Anybody can sign up. We have a lot of restaurants, retailers, over 800 people have signed up for that. You can go there, post your hours, what you're doing. One of our restaurants just posted today that they decided to cut back on some of their dinner hours. They had been doing all 3 meals. So it's a good place to get your information out. It's accessed quite a bit. So along those same lines, another question that came in that says, I'm following all the rules and guidelines. And as we know, at a 50% capacity, it's going to limit your capacity and cost more money to have things at that way. How do I make sure that the customers know that what policies that are in place besides just posting a sign which they may not look on a door? How do I get that information out to them, or where can they find it? Where is it posted for the city? I'll have Jeff up on this one. No, Jeff, I think you're muted again.
I'll start, and then probably either Peter or the mayor may even want to add on. And that is we're trying to get word out. We continue both through our partnership with the Chamber and others about who's open and how they're open and things like that. Peter's already talked about ways that you can message to your customers through your webpage and others. We're going to continue to work on this. Nobody has figured out that silver bullet answer yet to how to tell people it's safe and it's the right place to go. I will tell you, though, that we've heard from several customers, and the mayor can speak to this perhaps a little bit better than I, where their customers have gone in and they almost turn around and walk out because they don't feel safe. And that becomes an important part. So as part of the consideration around public health and around some of the guidelines, that's been in the thinking of the city council, the mayor, and our public health officials. So it's both about communication and about consistency, because the reality is as an example, using the face mask, that's not so much about your own personal health, it's about the health of others. And so it's about the community as a whole. And so those are the types of things you want to communicate within your advertising as well as your marketing. So I don't know if the mayor or Peter, you want to add any points onto that.
I was just going to mention again, Google My Business page has places exactly right there, so you can list everything you're doing related to COVID-19 in your community or in your business. And so before they ever even get to the door, they can see exactly everything that you're doing, that you put in place to make sure that your customers are safe in coming in there. That would be the first place to put it. And again, inside, your signage and all those other things, just like you said, Jeff, if you make a video or take pictures, let them see the things that you're doing to do that, and then just get the message out there in every place that you can.
Margaret, did you have something to add?
I did. This conversation really has kind of sparked my mind about risk management from a perspective of people wanting to say, I got COVID-19 when I walked into your store. So there's a whole set of tools that you have to minimize the risk or have good defenses in a case. And one is documentation and signage, showing that people understand the risk when they come into your place. And so taking pictures, documenting what you're doing, but to also answer the question, in part answer the question about how do I show my customers that the precautions we're taking by your deeds and actions. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, oh, I went in and the person wore gloves and never changed them as they were touching this and then that and then that. You can say all you want, you have these policies in place. You have to implement them or you're going to get in trouble. The other thing that I wanted to point out too, a few of you have mentioned the statement, how can you tell people we're safe? And being a lawyer who's litigated a lot, promising safety is not always the best way to go. Promising that you're going to do all of the things that you should be doing from the standards that have been set by the CDC and the state, and saying we're following all the guidelines to make sure that we minimize risk of COVID-19 as much as possible is better to my ears than saying you are going to be safe when you come into my store, because you cannot guarantee safety.
And Margaret, you're right, you cannot guarantee safety, but do some of the retailers or restaurants, do they have increased liability even if they're following all proper procedures, if there happens to be an outbreak that can be traced back to their location?
There is a risk of liability, and this is the buzz and the conversation and the great unknown in our profession and everywhere. Like, what is the risk of liability? And you touched on a huge issue of causation. And if people can actually trace it back to a source, causation is an easier thing to prove. But yes, liability is a big issue. And there's a huge concern that most insurance policies are either going to not cover it or have exclusions or exceptions. And it could very well, in effect, even if not on paper, but in effect, be an uninsurable issue. And that's why you're seeing several states across the country start passing bills that give some level of limited immunity for businesses that are following safety precautions. I know there's some movement on the federal level too. Colorado, they didn't entertain or pass anything like that here when they were in session. So we're not going to have anything like that, at least until next session.
I would add to that too, there's a couple of sides to this, and that's really your online reviews. If you say you're safe and you're doing things like we were talking about where people aren't changing gloves or using the same gloves, you're at great risk of someone going to go write a negative review about you and how you're actually operating. I've already seen it happening. And so, there is a social repercussion to how you're actually going to implement these things, and your reviews are going to be even way more important than they have been in the past. So I would be, as a business, really emphasizing, let's do what we're supposed to do. Everybody's doing it on the team, and let's be asking for reviews. We need these good reviews, and our clients that are coming in now can be saying, look, I went, I had a great meal, whatever it was, and I felt safe. They were actually following the things they needed to follow, and let's start getting that in your reviews so that what you're doing is being reflected out there as well in that way. So your online reviews right now are going to be super critical. I'd be watching that very, very closely and making sure you have some system and plan in place of how you're going to not only get the reviews, but also monitor and deal with any issues that might come up.
Yeah, recommendations and word of mouth have always been critical to, especially to small businesses, and even more so now that people feel safe. So looking over the questions that have been submitted, one was submitted specifically for Lauren. Are EIDL loans still available for small businesses?
Yep. So the acronym is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. EIDL is how most people have heard it been referred to. Also through the SBA. I believe these are still available. So go onto the SBA's website and see if you can find the application there. There's been some confusion on this one because this EIDL program had a $1,000 per employee advance. Some people considered this a grant because it did not have to be repaid. I don't know if that's available anymore. I don't believe so. But yeah, the EIDL loans I think are still there. So check out that with the SBA.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So we do have quite a few that have come in. Thank you very much. And there's still room for more if people want to submit questions. We're looking over. This one is an industry that's really hard hit. We've noticed that here at the chamber. The special events industry, like catering and venues, they've been really hard hit. Is there anything, federal, state, local level, specifically geared to them compared to other businesses to help them get through this? Anybody have any word on this?
And perhaps I can start for just a second, and that is we've been in conversations with a number of those businesses in Broomfield and continue to try to be open to that dialogue and provide the most updated information we can from public health and trying to understand it. The second part is I had mentioned earlier the Enhanced Broomfield program that the council had put in place and modified. And as we moved through that program, we moved into a new stage with it based upon the feedback and then the insight of the mayor and the council members. And that is we've tried to figure out ways to support businesses as they're incurring additional costs related to reopening or in these other things. And so for caterers, for other people in special events, we recognize that there may be some additional costs over their normal behavior, their former behavior, I guess a better way to say it. And so it may be cost for additional gloves, it may be spacing or doing things differently and more tables or whatever it is. And so they can reach out to us for an Enhanced Broomfield application and see if there's some expenses directly related to that reopening or that change in business. So that's at least one part of the answer. As far as the regulatory environment, we just keep trying to keep up and let people know what's happening. I don't know if Lauren, if you have any insights on what the federal government or state may be thinking as far as supporting those businesses.
Well, I'll say kind of for many businesses and events can certainly fall into this. The PPP loan has certainly gotten the spotlight, probably because it's one that's the most confusing for a lot of ways. But there are other resources available that businesses can take advantage of. So I'll speak to the PPP loans specifically. You can still apply for them for another month. And if you don't use them for the qualified expenses for it to be forgiven, you don't have to apply for forgiveness. And at that point, it's just a 1% interest loan, which is incredible. You can't borrow money for cheaper than that. So if you need to use this money for supplies and inventory, an example I'll use is like a food truck. If you had to lay off your employees and you're the only one working now, you have to spend that money on food so that you can sell it and bring in revenue, then do that and don't worry about the forgiveness part. So some other options that are out there is if you do still have employees, there's an employee retention tax credit available. This cannot be combined with the PPP loan, so know that. But so it's up to 50% of $10,000 in wages paid. You can claim this on your second quarter 941 if you haven't filed it yet. And it is a refundable credit, so you can get more in credit than you actually withheld in taxes. So that's a good resource. And then there's tax deferment as well. So the employer share of Social Security tax can be deferred, and this, you can still claim this even if you got PPP loan and can be qualified for forgiveness. So there's other options out there for, you know, a whole variety of businesses that need the support.
Lauren, since you're talking on the subject, one of the questions they wanted to know, can the EIDL emergency advance, the PPP loans, and you mentioned the tax deferment, can you get all of them? Can they, multiple ones, be forgiven, or can only one or the other be taken or forgiven?
So they're kind of, so some came first, and then you can qualify for less funding based on what you received first. So if you got the EIDL advance, your PPP loan will be reduced by the amount of the advance that you received. So if you got $1,000, it'll just be $1,000 less of your PPP loan. So I'll reiterate this. So the tax deferment can be combined with the PPP forgiveness. The second quarter 941 is altered to account for this, so it's going to be different than it's looked like in other quarters. And the employer retention credit cannot be combined with PPP loan, but I believe it can with the EIDL loan.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to remind everybody, we are recording this and it'll be available on the Broomfield website. There is a lot of technical information we're going through. So if you didn't write all this down, especially what Lauren just went through, it will be available for you to look at tomorrow and for the foreseeable future. Thank you. Chris, this question is, I'm going to tee you up for this one because I think you'll have some insights. Right now, people are starting to be hired back, but a lot of them aren't. What are some of the best hiring techniques people can use during the recovery?
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, good question. Of course, you're going to contact your local workforce center, right? And so we'll get those jobs posted and get the visibility in the community, eyes on those jobs. You know, I think probably much like we're hearing as it relates to customers and their concerns for their safety and that their practices in place. This applies to potential employees as well, as they're looking for places to work. And again, coming back to Margaret's statements of we can't guarantee safety, but to let your applicants know that you're following the best practices that are put out by the CDC, by our local public health, is going to help alleviate some of those concerns that we're hearing. I also think that we have a lot of individuals who are that have been impacted, who are looking for work. And something we promote through Workforce is skills-based hiring. Sometimes we use proxies for some of the different skills that we look at in jobs in terms of requiring college degrees. My team can sit down with a business that's looking to hire and really dive in on what are the skill sets that you're really looking to hire for. And knowing that we have a lot of individuals in our community with transferable skill sets, I'm confident that we can help people find good qualified talent to help individuals right now. And so again, I know I said it tongue in cheek, but I would encourage you to reach out to us. It is a no-cost service, and we are here to help and promote those opportunities in our community.
And if people don't realize it, the Workforce is co-located with the Health and Human Services building on the corner of First and Spader Way. Are your offices?
Thank you, Sandy.
Your offices are open right now, just with limited capacity?
So yes, our offices are open. It is limited capacity, but the full team, the full workforce team is working. We have a lot of individuals who are working virtually right now as well. But do please reach out to us. You can reach us. Sam, I know you have our contact information in the bio and the program literature, but our phone number, we are answering and returning phone calls, is 303-464-5855, and we'd be happy to help.
Okay, thank you. As we are possibly recovering, Colorado does seem to be doing a really good job of keeping the numbers of new cases down, even though we have had a slight uptick. And I'm going to tee Jeff up for this one, and then I might touch on a few things myself. What kind of resources, networking activities are available within Broomfield County for the small businesses that are recovering?
First off is as you've already noticed, there's a lot of resources through the Metro Denver or the Metro North Denver small SBDC. The three individuals that are participating today, as well as others, are there to help. The Broomfield Chamber has been an incredible partner and continues to be an incredible partner on how we reach out to and support our small businesses and our medium-sized businesses, for that matter, in our community. And so those are two of the really key partners that we have here. In addition, what we've been trying to do within the city and county is making sure that you have access to the people that we have, who are sometimes the best resources. And so our public health officials, the deputy director and the director, as well as the staff, have been answering direct business questions and follow-up questions. And so there's an opportunity for people to really get straight to the answer. As Sam noted in my original introduction, I'm an economist by training. As the mayor would probably point out, sometimes I become too much of an economist and I start talking economic talk and start using those terms. The same is true, unfortunately, for our public health officials, and sometimes even more so, where we can't seem to cut through it. But what I would say really truthfully to everybody is Deborah and Jason really do know how to speak English and speak to businesses, and really worked hard to make sure that people are understanding those rules, those guidelines, and then listening, quite frankly, to see if there's something else. The city council and the mayor pushed forward a variance request to the state of Colorado, and so they are reaching out and reaching up into other levels of government to make sure that they're advocating on behalf of Broomfield. So all of those resources are here for small businesses. And so from that, before I turn it back to you, Sam, Sarah may have some additional thoughts about other resources that we haven't talked about yet beyond, because we have very capable librarians who listen and hear those questions. So Sarah?
Thanks, Jeff. One thing that is meeting the public is the frustration that we can't all be together. And so given resources, we have great outdoor spaces, and we have had just in our realm, book groups have taken to meeting outside. They bring folding chairs and meet on the lawn of the library. And that's something else that I think businesses could do as well, to network with each other. Just do it outside, mask up, stay distant from each other, and get the word out that this is happening. We see that we've had people coming into the library again and are getting over that fear out in public and being with other people indoors. That is a real thing that that we see in the community. So people are getting together for shorter amounts of time, but still are out there. And so I think that Broomfield, with our open spaces, offer opportunities to get together, and with internet, just meetings like this, but that need for a closer human connection is what we're seeing.
Thank you, Sarah. I've actually had meetings in the grass just to the west of the library. You know, on a nice day, you get to sit out there. It's been nice. Over the years, too, the Broomfield Chamber, the SBDC, and the library have collaborated to bring programming at the library, either upstairs, and there's a large room up there, or even in the auditorium. Unfortunately, we're not able to have any at this particular time, but we will again in the future, which are great. A couple of things I will mention the Chamber is doing. Pretty much all of our networking events went online. Our after hours, our leads groups, they all went online. Based on where we are, we're starting to have those a little public. We're having a Friday afternoon club tomorrow. Masks are highly encouraged, and we'll just kind of walk away if you don't wear a mask. We're hoping only like a half a dozen people. We don't want many people. It's going to be at a local brewery, so I'm not going to announce it here because I don't want everybody to know everywhere. Our next after hours is actually going to be an in-person one. We have a very large facility, but we're only going to allow 35 people in there. We still don't know how the details of how to serve drinks and food safely, because obviously you can't have people just go up and put things on a plate. Things really look different now. One other resource that I have to give the mayor and Jeff some kudos. A while back, the mayor and I were talking about how can we get money to some small businesses. And so Jeff did allude to this. So Pat and I were talking about it, and he went to the city, and immediately, I mean, just like that, they identified funds from the Enhanced Broomfield program and pivoted it and turned it into a grant program for small businesses to help them get through this. And not only did they find some money, almost $100,000, City Council, I believe it was unanimous, approved even more money because that went really fast. Since then, the Chamber is partnering with the Community Foundation for a small business grant fund that we're trying to get up to a certain amount. We're just a couple of $1,000s away from being able to start opening that up for grants too. So if somebody is listening that has had no problems whatsoever and wants to dump, you know, $50, $50,000 into that, just contact Community Foundation and they'll be glad to put it into that fund. Thank you.
So Sam, before you go on, this is a question for Lauren, and I know, I'm not sure I'm allowed to ask questions.
You can do it.
We got a question, Lauren. So the Enhanced Broomfield program has been doing grants effectively for $1,000 to $7,500. A couple of businesses have wondered, how is that going to affect them when they go to do their taxes? Is that a gift? Is that a loan? And those types of things, so that you know it's a grant from us for them to move forward with their businesses, and so we don't have any collateral requirements. So we don't have a loan document written up. So perhaps you may want to answer that question, or perhaps you want to defer it and you and I can talk later.
So the grants are not taxable income. So how you want to account for it on your business financials, most likely I would put it into an equity account. So on your shareholders equity section on your balance sheet, probably like your owner's distribution, owner's expense, because you want to show that it did go into the business. Oh, Mayor, did you have a different idea there?
Well, I was just going to ask you, Lauren, the question that that if you have an expense that you incurred and you got a grant to offset that expense, could you deduct the expense then?
So, and this is another one that comes up with the PPP loans. So in that case, the answer is no. At this point,
Yeah,
so the expenses that are not, so the expenses that will be forgiven for PPP loans are not going to be deductible on the tax return. As far as I know, I think that's the same case with the grant. So a couple different ways you could do that is you could, on your P&L, when you incur the expense, you debit the expense. We're going to accounting 101 here. So you would debit the expense. And then once you receive the grant or the forgiveness of the loan, you could credit it so that the expense nets out to zero. What I'm encouraging my clients to do is almost create another sub account on the P&L to show this is the amount that was forgiven, just because it may change. There's some petitioning going on that people are saying the PPP loans are they're not meant to be taxable income, but if you don't let us deduct the expense, that's basically the same thing. So it may change that the expenses can be deducted. So we really want it laid out well on the P&L, just so we know, just have some placeholder accounts. But yeah, Jeff, let's talk offline too, and we can get some more clarity around that. And I did want to point out another tax advantage from the CARES Act this year, since you mentioned contributions to charitable organizations. New this year is a $300 above the line deduction for charitable contributions. This is cash donations. Normally this is an itemized deduction, so you have to get over your standard deduction to deduct it. This year, everybody up to $300 of cash donations, you get a tax deduction for. So if you have some cash flow this year, you want to support some organizations, you will get the tax benefit.
That's really good to know. That does really help. Originally, when we were planning this forum, it was only going to run until 4:30, but we've had so many questions, the panelists have agreed to extend it out until 5 o'clock. If some of the people that are watching this need to drop out, go ahead and ask the questions. You will be able to see the entire event recorded at a later time. So I just wanted to put that out there, and thank you all for agreeing to stay longer based on these questions. So this one we don't really have an HR person, but I'm going to ask this and see who might be able to answer this one. Are employers required to give paid days off for sick leave due to COVID? And do the employees have to use regular sick time first if they do? How is that handled? Margaret?
I can start. Let me preface this by saying that the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has a very good webpage with frequently asked questions questions exactly like this one. And it's a very helpful resource. I read it rather than going and reading the basic statutes or rules if I just need a quick answer. And what you're talking about, there's the Colorado HELP rules, which is an acronym. And yes, Colorado did implement some paid sick leave requirements for people who are on leave due to COVID-19, whether they're getting tested or were sick. And there are, so if an employer has a paid sick leave policy that that meets the needs of the requirement, then they don't have to give additional time than what is already given. But there is something which, and I haven't gone to double check this, I don't do employment law every day, but there is some level of, if the paid leave has already been used up and then the employee does get sick, the employer does have to then provide paid leave up to the amount required under the Colorado HELP rules. And I believe it's at 2/3 of their regular pay. So it's not a full paid leave. But if you want to know more, you want to be certain, don't rely on what I just said, go online to the CDPHE. They've got a good source to get started if you want to do some independent research before seeking counsel.
And there's also, they also put on a page, it's a little easier to get to, it's covid19.colorado.gov, where the various state regulations have been put in place. Before I move on, does anybody else have anything they can add? Any thoughts to that? Okay, just thought I'd check. So looking at some of these, there's a couple that people are looking to the future, trying to figure out, everybody's crystal ball right now is a little bit cloudy. But we did have some people that wanted to know if the curve suddenly goes in the other way. What's going to happen? What can small businesses do now to prepare if they got to re-shut down after just getting opened back up? What are some of the things they might be able to put in place just to help them survive another shutdown if it came? Anybody have any advice for that? And this would be advice, not legal advice, just ideas.
Well,
I do have one conversation. What's that? Go ahead, Jeff.
Maybe I'll just start, and then I suspect Peter may have some ways or some thoughts around how to communicate uncertainty to your customers. But the only thing I can tell you is as soon as we learn of anything, as soon as we begin to see it, City Council, the Public Health Director, and others try to get word out and try to communicate as much as we possibly can. So if you haven't already, always check the city and county's webpage. You know, as the mayor alluded to in his opening remarks, we're fortunate that we're a county because we have our own public health department, and so that we can react and get word out pretty quickly as things change. No one has been able to forecast exactly what is going on with this virus, you know, with perfection, and so therefore, the thing you can do is just keep up on the information. Peter, I don't know if you have some ideas on how to communicate with customers and others.
There's a couple things, you know, that I think of, and a lot of in restaurants in particular, you know, definitely have made this shift. But a lot of retailers have done it too. And if you haven't done this yet, or if what you have is not working well, then get it dialed in. But the ability to process transactions, to take orders without having to have a physical presence to do that. So either have an e-commerce on your website or a way to buy products on your website and pick it up at the door or have it delivered, you know, all those mechanisms that make that work. If that's not really dialed in for you right now, even though you may be partially open, like keep working on that, keep getting that dialed in so that it is working well. So in the event that you can't open your doors anymore, you can still continue to do business. And a lot of businesses have really made that shift, and they're being able, you know, finding ways to survive and keep things going by being able to do that. So if that's not really dialed in yet, you still need to get that all where it needs to be. Take the opportunity right now, even as you're opening, and obviously you're busier, but keep that in mind. I need to create some continuity in the business. So what systems and tools and things do I need to have in place ready to go in the event that I can't operate the way that I normally do?
And the only thing I would just add to Peter's point that he raised is several restaurants, several small businesses, and including small manufacturers, have undertaken methods to do advanced orders or gift cards or other things.
Yep.
So that when they can reopen, they can immediately begin to make deliveries of those products or goods, or figure out other ways to do such things like curbside or direct delivery. So, you know, you don't always necessarily have to have that immediate open, but you want to be able to maintain operations, and that will help with cash flow, you know, and other things as part of their financing.
Yeah, and I'll add as part of that cash flow, one of the key things is communication. Not just with your customers, it's with your vendors and with your employees. I mean, now is a good time to have the conversation, say, yes, we are paying, we're doing this. However, I still want to pay you, I still want to keep you employed, but if we don't have any business, we have to shut down, I want to let you know that this is how we would react. So your vendors aren't shocked, and your employees know that you really care for them. Margaret?
On that point, if you're looking ahead and entering into new agreements with new vendors, you definitely want to look at force majeure clauses, things like that, you know, most people had kind of started to forget about until now, and now they're scrambling to see if they had one in their agreement and whether it covers COVID-19 like situations. So looking at your contracts, either new ones, negotiating for contingencies that we have now learned about in the last 4 months, or looking at old contracts and maybe renegotiating the terms in preparation for something similar to happen again.
Really good advice. Peter, now you've touched on some of the tools people could use. And this was a question that came in from one of our people that are watching right now. I mean, can you expand on some of those tools, content marketing, referrals, how they can tie that to their website if their physical presence is shut down?
Yeah, so I'm kind of agnostic about the exact tool that you use, but I prefer to look at things at where should you spend money and invest the most. And that starts with your website. If your website is not doing everything you want it and need it to do, then make sure it does. Make sure it has what it should have on it. If you're not happy with who your vendor is, now's the time to make the change. Find the company or the person that you need to work with that's going to help you really make your website do everything that it needs to do. It's the one aspect of your marketing that you own. You have complete control of your website. It's the one thing that you have complete control of. So you have control of your messaging, you have control of the content that's there. You are able to do whatever you need to do. So if there's any limitations that you have because of how you're doing it now or the platform that you're using, find another company, find another platform that's going to make that work for you. It's too valuable right now to get hung up on that kind of piece. So I think your website has to be the core central piece of everything else. Put it on your website, then link from social media. Put it on your website, post a link on Instagram, Facebook, wherever it is that you're using, and drive traffic back to your website, because that's the place that you can really control the branding of your business, what's happening now, who you are, and everything that you're doing. Invest in your website because it's an asset that will continue to work for you and continue to be able to be used to expand your business. So that's kind of core foundational piece for me. If you're not clear who your correct clients are, who your market is, and that piece, then let's figure that out. Schedule an appointment with the SBDC. We can do all that consulting with you. It won't cost you a penny as a business and help clarify the message. But get your website dialed in so it's everything that you need. If you don't have e-commerce and you need it, get it. There's so many easy tools out there. Shopify, BigCommerce are great platforms that you can add e-commerce options for very little amount of money. And you honestly, for most part, you could probably do it yourself. You wouldn't even need to hire somebody. So there's a lot of options out there for that. Squarespace is another one. Great tool that's your website and e-commerce. It's drag and drop. Pretty much anybody with a little bit of technical skill can do it. But if that's not your forte, find somebody. Get somebody to do it for you. It's just too valuable not to invest in those tools that are going to help you communicate with clients, customers, prospects, and be something that you can use on a daily, regular basis in marketing your business. If you just haven't touched your website in years, it's time. Let's get that thing working like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, a web page is no longer something you just slap there like a sign on your building. It needs to connect with your customers. So one of the things I've been hearing is a lot of people are coming back, retailers in particular, but they have, like restaurants, they're only at 50%. Retailers, they've got to have spacing, so they don't have as many people in there. So they're no longer doing as much sales per square foot as they used to. And for a lot of retailers, that really drives their bottom line. These are numbers they look at. So they've got a capacity issue. A lot of their costs are fixed, and they don't feel like they can raise prices. even though they have so many fixed costs that they have to amortize over all the product they sold, which is less. So how can they reach out to their people? Can they raise prices? Is there a way to message that without saying, well, I'm just going to go somewhere else then. I'm going to shop 20 people until I find it the price I was before. How do you do that? I know Peter's probably got about 6 answers to that touch on it, but does anybody else have any ideas? I mean, Jeff, you could go on about inflationary pressures in the economy. But that's a real concern.
Real challenge.
Losing money.
Pricing is a real challenge right now, because we have to start using different formulas of how we come up with that price. You know, I don't have easy answers for that. I think you're going to have to do what you're going to have to ask your customers. Here's where we're at. Here's what we need to do, and what are my customers comfortable with? You know, we're going to need to put out more surveys and get more feedback than we're used to doing to find out where are our customers at, what are they comfortable with, you know, what do they want to see from us now that we weren't providing before. I think it's time to really start asking our customers more questions and finding out what their needs are so that we're really addressing those. And you know what? I think all of us would say, I will pay more if I get what I want. It's really not about the price. It's about getting the things that are really going to meet my needs.
Excellent. Margaret?
You just made me think of an experience that I had as a customer. I take my son to a swim school, and they did exactly what you're talking about. You know, they send out emails after emails explaining, here's where we're at. When they were able to open up, it was very, very limited at the same price. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can you stay in business doing this? But, you know, they probably had the PPP loan and all that stuff. But sure enough, within 3 to 4 weeks, they said, okay, you know, we've figured this out. We've got a system. We're starting to be able to add more people back, but we still can't make our operations work at the price that we're quoting you. Here are the things. I mean, this was all laid out in an email to all of us customers. It was like we were a part of their decision making. And they said, you know, you can still do your class that you're doing, but we're going to have to raise the price like $8 or $10. And I thought, okay, that's great. Like, I'll do it. And so, I mean, it worked for me as the customer.
So I had seen very recently at a Broomfield restaurant, they added at the bottom of the menu, they said they have a new 9% COVID upcharge that they're going to add to the check. I thought that was interesting because they're being fully transparent about it. But my concern is when people see that on the bill, if they think that's gratuity, and then they'll tip less. So I wouldn't want the employees getting tip less, especially during the times that they're probably getting less hours. So from my perspective, I think it's fine increasing your prices on your products and your services. I don't think there needs to be a separate upcharge, because to me that makes it look temporary. We're gonna charge this 9% for the next 6 months, but really you may need to permanently increase your prices. And I think it's about the value. If you're getting the meal that you enjoy, the ambiance you enjoy, the service that is satisfying to you, you're going to pay whatever you think is a fair price. You're going to keep patronizing that business. So I think these are great perspectives, is get feedback from your customers and do what you need to do to stay in business.
And the only thing I would add real quickly is this is one of those times where you do want to go look at what your competitors are doing and do some of your own individual intel of who you think and how they're handling it too. So the general belief is that people are going to pay for value and pay for service and pay for that convenience. And those are the things that you've got to build on. Exactly how much, that's going to be determined by the individual business owner, but you can check out your competitors and see what they're doing. because that's going to help you help inform you on the marketplace too.
Thank you. Thank you all. We've only got time for a couple more questions. I'm going to throw this one directly at the mayor and have him answer this if he can. Mandatory masks. Now, some places have them, some places don't. City Council decided a little while back not to go that direction. Any idea if it might come up again?
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas. It will come up again. On Tuesday night, on Tuesday night, we're going to have a report from Jason, our public health director, in which we're going to talk about masks. And there's a tremendous pressure, not only from the community right now to go to mandatory masks for businesses, but there's a lot of pressure from other Denver and Aurora and Boulder all gone that direction. And so I suspect that council will seriously consider mandatory masks, and I think the burden may be put on the businesses. And one of the, where the businesses shouldn't provide service if somebody's not wearing a mask, and I'll add, wearing a mask means it goes above your nose. And so my comment to this group here is that we're easy to reach at council@broomfieldcitycouncil.org. Sam, you were on council for 8 years, and so when we go into this territory, and there is no template for us to fill out right now, there's a whole bunch of different examples out there right now. So Broomfield will do it in Broomfield's way. To the extent that the business community wants to provide comments on what's reasonable, what's not, I would highly recommend that they enter that conversation this week, because I suspect the pressure is so significant that it's likely we'll do a mandatory mask mandate on businesses, and so.
Yeah, you'll have significant pressure on both sides. Some businesses that want you to have it, some that don't want you to have it, and same with customers and employees. There are quite a few questions that we're just not going to get to, but we're rounding up to 5, and I got a couple of closing arguments or comments. Most of it has to do with the crystal ball, closing down outdoor seating, because you may not think about it today when it was in the high 90s and hitting 100 tomorrow, but what are restaurants going to do when we come up to October, November, December? What are things going to look like in 12 months, 24 months, which is hard to answer because we don't even know what things are going to look like next week, let alone 2 years from now. So those are some of the questions that if people want to ask, we can get that information from anybody. Our panelists want to send that in, can go do that. But for right now, we are just about out of time for this business continuity forum. I want to thank our panel once again. You guys were fantastic. You had great information. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. Also want to thank our audience for their time and attention. Almost every single one of them is still on here. Getting up to 5 o'clock, we've only lost a couple of people that had to log off early. Make sure you download the program for this webinar, which contains the contact information for everyone who spoke here today, as well as some exciting upcoming program from the City and County of Broomfield and the North Metro SBDC. And just a reminder, the SBDC does offer free one-on-one consulting and programming to support small businesses. Just this morning, somebody contacted me about starting a business, and I sent them to the SBDC for a free consult on what they will need to start a business. Something that I really appreciate, them being in partnership with the Chamber and the city. You can check out them. Their website is northmetrosbdc.com. I'm grateful we were able to come here together, and hopefully this was useful information for the Broomfield area small businesses. Today you've heard from Jeff Remine. He's the Broomfield Director of Economic Vitality. Chris Dewhurst, Broomfield Workforce Division Manager. Sarah Brennan Green, Broomfield Programming Librarian. Peter Brissett, SBDC Digital Marketing Consultant and the Digital Marketing Dude. Margaret Lent Parker, the SBDC Legal Consultant. And Lauren Metz, the SBDC Financial Consultant. For any more information about the panelists or any of the resources you heard about today, please consult the program handout for this webinar or visit us online at broomfield.org, northmetrosbdc.com, or the broomfieldchamber.com. Thank you all, and I hope you have a rest of your good afternoon and evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Take care.